We're going to start off. Mayor Johnston is going to come up and start some introductions. Thank you.
On behalf of the city of Ojai, I welcome you all here. This is not really a city event. This is simply we're hosting a place for you all to come. We do not have all the answers, but we're going to try to give you the best information we have as of this evening, and we will hang around and talk to you individually and answer questions. And this will be maybe one of a series of public meetings on this whole issue, because this is not over. We're just entering into the transition period to recovery. With that, we do have a few people who have come a long way to be with us and be supportive. Congresswoman Julia Brownlee is here with us. Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson is with us. Assemblywoman Monique Limon is with us. And our own supervisor, who actually has about 90% of all this. My part, so the 4.5 square miles in the center, less than about 15% of the geographic area that we've been defending. So anyway, we welcome you here. We hope this is beneficial, and we will continue doing it as often as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, we're going to give you some information on what the fire has done and what it's doing now. Again, thank you very much. A couple points. We'll have a question and answer period at the end, and we will stay here as long as you need us to answer questions when this is over. So I promise you we'll do the best we can to answer the questions. Also, EMSA Public Health has masks available for everyone and their family. They'll be here in the back. You'll be able to get them at the end. There's plenty, so you don't have to rush to get them, and they're available, obviously free, no charge. We'll make sure we get those to you, but again, you don't have to rush to get them. There's plenty.
Good evening. I'm John McNeil with the Ventura County Fire Department. I'm a division chief. Thank you. Thank you. So my role in this evening's information session is to speak to the operations of the Thomas Fire from Monday night to where we are today. So I want to reference the map, and this is what we call an operational map, and it's got obviously quite a bit of icons on there that make sense to people that need to read it. But using it for this discussion, I just wanted to break it down. Obviously, the red is the perimeter of the fire. Down on the lower edge where you see the yellow line, which is actually Highway 126, and you see the black icons here. That's also the fire's edge, but that's the fire's edge that's we call contained. It's out. So there is the edge, or the perimeter. We have Highway 33 coming up from the southern edge here and exiting the north end there. We have Highway 150 from the Santa Barbara Ventura County line heading east to toward Upper Ojai and into Santa Paula. So that's the reference for the map. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, this fire started Monday, 6:30 in the evening, and I was initially dispatched to it. The fire started where the number 2 is, right here on the Highway 150 marker. 6:30 Monday night, we had weather. We had forecasted winds in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range out of the northeast. The fire department had information on this forecast, and in response to that, we upstaffed resources. And so when this response went out that night, we had quite a few resources to draw from initially. I think in the first, I'm going to say 2 hours, we had more than 150 resources either en route or on scene. The number 2 is an area near Thomas Aquinas College. It was in the river bottom on the eastern edge of the highway. And when we arrived on scene, the incident management team quickly realized that we had a wind-driven fire that was going to spread rapidly in a southwest direction. About a half hour into it, the number 1 icon on there is a second start. Now, we're still under investigation with the cause of both these fires, but we believe it is a separate start. That's in the Koningstein area and also in Upper Ojai, and it was on the upper edges of Koningstein. Both those locations with the northeast wind on it set it up for a progression to head towards the communities or the cities of Ventura and the cities of Santa Paula initially. Within 5 hours, it was on the western edge of the city of Ventura, and I think we all have seen some of the devastation in its path. So with that information, with the location where the incident management team knew it was headed, the top priorities, and the priorities haven't changed to today. And the top priorities were life safety, and what I mean by that is making sure everyone's out of the way of the fire, and anyone that is in the way we're protecting. So that was the top priority. The second priority was to minimize property loss. In the end, that first, I believe it was 12 hours, we evacuated over 50,000 people. So in a coordinated effort with the public agencies that responded, but the citizens also, it's a team effort to get people out of their houses and out of the way of this fire. Fire starts here where the 1 and 2 are. The progression is this way. After the first 24 hours, like I said, it hit the east or the western edge of the city of Ventura. The progression of the fire eventually moved further north, and by day 2, this is the Upper Ojai area right here for map reference. That second day, it started progressing to the north, up and around by Thatcher School in the Upper Ojai area, or the east end of the valley. The concerns, of course, at that point is we would have fires on both sides of the Ojai Valley. That second day, not only was the fire progressing up to the north, it also started to get established down in the Creek Road area and the Black Mountain area. So the concerns for the management team was the city of Ojai at that point and the communities of Miramonte and Oakview and everything to the south. Day 3, the fire starts progressing further north, and now with that northeast wind put in alignment to run the kind of the northern edge of the valley of Ojai. And that was Wednesday night. If you were in the valley, you saw that progress across, started about sundown, about 5 o'clock. 2 hours later, it was across the 33 in the Cozy Dell area and off into the forest by the next day. So that's day 2. Day 3, it starts progressing further up north, now into the forest. The threat to the city of Ojai and the communities to the south is somewhat mitigated, although we're still putting efforts into, at some point, trying to contain it. So our third priority after the life safety and minimizing the property loss was to try and go into some type of containment. The weather started to subside a bit with the wind, so we were able to start doing some containment, and that's where you see it down on the 126 side where the city of Ventura is. Other areas of containment as we come around this way, of course, the Pacific Ocean is always a great area to try and contain a fire if you can't control it any other way. So this also will be turning black here shortly. Other areas of containment are along the southern edge of Lake Casitas, if I can see it right here. We're starting to get good containment here, and this is a big concern for us because eventually we're going to get a wind shift. We're going to get our onshore breeze off the ocean. So the concern was if we still had uncontrolled fire down here below the areas that are unburned, that wind influence off the ocean would challenge us in this area. So we've focused a lot of efforts on our containment right here. Currently, the fire is slowed down quite a bit on the far end, on the eastern progression. At one point, the city of Fillmore was threatened a little more than it is today. I'm not going to say it's not threatened anymore, but the threat is quite a bit less because of the efforts to contain the fire off the 126 going to the north on the Fillmore side. The main progression of the fire in the last 2 days has been up into the forest. It's now into the county of Santa Barbara. It crossed over around the Divide Peak area, Old Man Mountain. So the efforts on the control side will be to finish containing the areas that have burned down in the near the communities in the first few days, and then we'll focus our efforts up into the forest to get the fire contained. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Rip Ripley, and I work for the Ventura County Fire Department as a fire behavior analyst. So what does a fire behavior analyst do? I actually work in conjunction with an incident meteorologist assigned to the incident here, and we look at basically the fire environment, fuel, topography, and weather, to come up with a forecast to provide public safety and firefighter safety, and also planning decisions on basically looking at the fire, the potential of the fire, and the impacts that it may have. So a little bit like Fire Behavior 101, so that you can understand a little bit more why this fire is doing what it's doing, and what the potential is ahead of us, and the challenges that the firefighters face. So the fire environment consists of fuel or vegetation, topography, and the final and most important is weather. And that's really what has driven this fire. We provide, and I'm going to kind of zero in on fuel. So vegetation, we look at age class. And one of the things as a fire behavior analyst is I come in and I look at fire history. How has fire burned on this landscape before? Of the 20 largest fires in California, until this fire, 4 of them have been in this surrounding area. This fire moved into that list today and is at number 15. So of the 20 largest fires that California, all of California has experienced, 5 of them have surrounded the Ojai Valley over the Matilaha fire in 1932 up till this date today. And we look at that for a couple different reasons, to see how the fire moves across the landscape, but we also look at age class, how old the fuel is. Once you get it beyond 25 years, there's more dead component in our brush and the vegetation out there than there is live component. That live component has moisture in it, and that provides a heat sink, or kind of keeps fire behavior down. And when you have an extreme amount or an over amount of dead component, that fire will basically run through the vegetation. We do take samples here in Ventura County. Cesar is one of our sample sites, and Laguna Ridge, another sample site, and we monitor the live fuel moisture. Critical is 60%, and it is at 56% right now. One of the other things we look at is called energy release component, and it basically looks at the dryness in the live and the dead fuels out there. When this fire started, it was at 84%. Now, this is something that we track over almost 1,700 days with the local weather stations that are here. Today, it is at 112. It has continually dried throughout this event, which has also promoted the fire behavior that is basically the challenge of the firefighters that are out there. Topography is the next challenge that we have. This is a very complex topographical features out here. It channels the wind, twists the winds. It makes access for us very difficult. The fire burning up in the forest right now, it's hard to get personnel and equipment safely in there. In the event that the fire takes off, there's little to no places for them to go. We call them safety zones. And so it really limits our ability to fight the fire in those remote areas. And plus the terrain is so extremely rugged and steep, getting equipment and support into those individuals is almost impossible. It causes erratic conditions with the winds that move across the landscape. It channels it down through the topographical features there and makes it very difficult. It causes rocks to roll out as the vegetation is cleared from the hillside. When we drove up in Matilaha Canyon the other day, you couldn't even make it back into the canyon because of the rocks that had come down onto the road. Plus the threat of those rocks coming down and hitting firefighters or personnel moving in and out of the canyon. The other portion is rollout. In steep terrain, the vegetation that starts to burn will roll out. Yucca plants, we call them pineapples. As they burn, they'll roll out and get into the bottoms of the drainages, and then fire burns uphill. It lights in the bottom of the drainages, and you get runs, and it's all part of that topographical features up there. And finally, I'd like to talk about weather. Weather is the driving force behind fire behavior. We are in day 6 of red flag warnings that had started on the very first day that this fire had started. The forecasted wind and weather, critical weather that was forecasted, this fire could not have started at a worse time. It was at the very beginning of that long-term forecasted weather event that we're still living through today. It's right now supposed to end tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, but now they're talking that they may extend it into next week. And we're hoping that we get a reprieve from the winds that are associated with this event that's come through. We're still going to be dealing with hot, dry conditions as we move further into the week. And that's how fire behavior will transition. This fire has been moved across the landscape by wind. In the Wheeler Fire, which was in 1985, it moved across the landscape based on the heavy vegetation that's there. And that also goes back to that fire history. Some of this has not burned since 1932, and some of the front country there has not burned, has no fire history associated with it. And that's the concern specifically for us now as we move into Carpinteria and that hillside there. Just to give you an idea, just to kind of balance on what Chief McNeil talked about, when this fire initially started at 2, it made a 12-mile run down there in 5 hours. It not only impacted the town of Ventura City, but all of the canyons that basically march across there and the ranches that were along those hillsides. It then moved around into your area where you were affected, and it made a 10-mile run in one night from the top of Nordorff Peak down into the drainage where it lined up with Matilahaw Canyon. And then the last run was 6 miles out of Matilahaw Canyon up onto the San Ynez Mountain Range where it sits today. It will continue to move across the landscape pushed by the hot, dry northeast winds. It is very, very challenging for us to deal with the fire environment that we have right now based on the weather that is really persistent for us out there. It's the challenge that we have to take, but we are going to be successful in overcoming this. When the weather changes, it is a huge help. Unfortunately, over the next 10 days, there's no rain or moisture in the forecast. So we will keep after it to provide the protection for our communities and the individuals that we serve. Thank you.
I'm Captain Jim Freihoff from the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. Thank you. I have a few different responsibilities. I am the Chief of Police for the City of Ojai, but I'm also the captain for the whole unincorporated area of the Ojai Valley, including Rose Valley and Lockwood Valley to boot. As it was said by Chief McNeil, this was an impressive fire that surrounded our valley. And in the very early onset of this, we had to get the word out very quickly to have evacuations take place. Thank you all for listening and heeding the advance warning for the voluntary evacuations. And when we come through and do mandatory evacuations, it's important to know that we don't take that decision very lightly, right? We don't want people to have to leave their homes unless they absolutely have to. But there's a good chance we're not going to be able to get back in there. So when we tell you it's mandatory, it's because we really, really want you to leave. With that, we also do road closures. The purpose of the road closures are there's a couple of reasons. One is, once we get all the residents out, we don't want any looters back in. The other is, the fire personnel and other emergency service workers that are working in those areas need to safely be able to work because they're not expecting any other cars to be there, and they're paying attention to their primary focus, which is the fire, to provide life safety for their whole community. As far as being able to provide messaging, in our community, I'm pretty good about getting on Facebook and sharing information about what's happening. But in an event like this, as large as it is, it's important for that information to come from a single source to make sure that we're not spreading rumors or unverified information. And thank you. And for us, that information is all shared through readyventuracounty.org. So if you don't already have that queued up or on your phone or on your computer at home, readyventuracounty.org is where that information is shared. There's a mapping feature that's now available also on vcemergency.com. You can type in an address and see exactly where the fire is at based on that mapping feature as well. And also for us to be able to communicate with you, there are a couple ways that we try and reach you through our VC Alert feature, which is basically our version of Reverse 911 that you need to sign up for. We do get some populated information from the phone companies, but you can opt into it and get the information you want to whatever device it is you're trying to get that information on. And also through Nixle, which is another broadcast feature that we use to notify people of emergencies and evacuations and road closures. You can find both of those on our website at vcsd.org. Just find a VC Alert and Nixle as well so that you get the right information at the time that we need to get it to you. So I'd like to give props to our fire department partners, right? We in Ventura County are blessed to have a wonderful relationship with all the other agencies in the county, other police departments. We work very, very well together. And at the very beginning stages of this fire, it was nice to be able to pick up a phone and call the people that we needed to get a hold of to find out what was going on and what they needed from us, from each other. And John and I do that routinely up here in the valley. So there's a lot of information being shared on Facebook about looting. We have been receiving calls regarding looting. We have not had any confirmed reports of that yet. But I want you to be vigilant, right? Once we evacuate an area, we took over the patrol of that area. Normally the Ojai Valley has about 5 officers on duty and a sergeant. Ever since the evacuations and the fire took place, we've had 50 officers here on 12-hour shifts up until now, including tonight. There's nobody getting in out of this valley without being stopped. I would like to commend our Office of Emergency Services team. They were not able to make it here. As you can imagine, they are still dealing with the crisis right now. There are still active fires surrounding our valley and in the county, and they're working very hard. So their manager, Kevin McGowan, has done wonderful work with our OES team to work with all of us managers to help us prepare for these disasters. There's no doubt that his efforts and those teams' efforts have really helped us perfect the best that we can, being able to get the notifications out, the messaging to the community we need so that we can all be safe. From damages in the unincorporated area, there was 140 residences destroyed, 37 damaged. There were numerous other buildings that were also destroyed and damaged. It's important now as we start this, it's rebuilding now, right? We still have fire around us, but it's important to know that we have a lot of our friends and family now who are without homes and without shelters. Our shelter here was closed earlier today just because of air quality, and also there's only one highway in and out, which is why this meeting was delayed, was because we did not want to put people in harm's way by putting them into a valley where we have one access point. So we have a better idea of where the fire is right now, and we felt comfortable having it today, and we wanted to share this information with you. And just lastly, to the girls that put the "We Love Police" sign outside the police station, we love you too. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ventura County Supervisor Steve Bennett, and thank you. And first, I just want to say I am really happy that you're here, that we're all here together. And I'm happy for a variety of reasons. I want to share some of that with you tonight. This is an historic fire that is visiting us here in Ventura County and in the Ojai Valley. Most of the time we're used to having these fires race and we get very nervous about them, but rarely do we have very many structures or very many people injured. And now we're at a very different situation here. We have over 500 structures that have been damaged. The city of Ventura, many neighborhoods devastated, people burned out. Up here in the Ojai Valley, we've had a lot of people burned out. But in the city of Ventura, for example, residential streets, just home after home lost in residential streets. That's not something we're used to here in Ventura. And we can talk and analyze a lot of reasons for that, but right now, an historic fire requires an historic response. And the one thing I want to emphasize as your representative is that I have never seen unified command work as smoothly or as effectively as they have here in Ventura County with this fire. And I know you've already complimented them. That's what I wanted to ask you to do. And thank you. I wanted to ask you to give them a hand. And when I say unified command, I want you to understand what unified command is. Unified command gets called in when an emergency happens. They always have unified command, but how expansive it becomes depends on the situation. Well, this historic fire has created an historic unified command response, all the way from the local level, Ojai City Council, Ventura County government, state government, and we appreciate having Assembly Member Monique Limon here, having Senator Hannah Beth Jackson here to help us with all of the state agencies that are there, and then at the federal level, and really appreciate having Congresswoman Julia Brownlee here also. But unified command is all three of those coming together, and we elected officials, we play a role in terms of representing you, but in terms of the grinding it out, day by day, hour by hour, long, long days, it comes from all of these staff. And I know you're really appreciative, and I want to just start off by appreciating that. And standing right over there is our Ventura County Fire Chief, Mark Lorenzen. He's just been killing himself, right, to make this happen. Right? Thank you, Mark. And standing on this side, in that doorway there, put your hand up, please. Mike Powers, the CEO of Ventura County, right? And so unified command is an attempt to try to make sure that the firefighting response doesn't get caught down in bureaucracy. Oh, whose job is it to do what? They have to move quick. You have a fire that moves 14 miles in 5 hours. You don't have time to have a conversation about whose jurisdiction is it in, whose truck should be responding, etc. The same thing is going to be true after this fire is under control and contained. And that is, we need unified command for the recovery, which will be a significant issue for us. And it is unified command with Mark Lorenzen and CAL FIRE and all of the fire personnel to try to put this fire out. It's unified command with Mike Powers and all the department heads of county government, the city manager, the mayor of Ojai, who is already up here, Johnny Johnson, working to try to make sure we have a seamless recovery. And so one of the things I want to emphasize, although we're not all the way out of danger yet, that we are already coordinating unified response for the recovery. And to that end, we will have a one-stop center where you can go to one place and get everything you need from a recovery, whether you were burned out, if that was unfortunate, other problems that you have. And that'll be at the Poinsettia Pavilion in Ventura, and that'll be a one-stop spot, and it will open up on Wednesday. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. On top of that, I'm sure all of the representatives share this, but I want to emphasize to you, my staff and my office, we focus on one thing, and that is trying to help get you the resources that you need. If you're lost, you're having problems, you're running into something, I really emphasize, please call my office, let us know. We want to know if you're having a problem. We want to be able to try to help you with that problem. Now, the other reason that I'm really happy to have such a big turnout, by the way, we had 1,500 people at Buena High School today at noon. And now we have this huge turnout here at Nordorff High School in the Ojai Valley this evening. But this historic fire is a time for us to have a historic community response. And I want to challenge us and ask us to do that. Certainly, we in small communities, I think in particular, we know how to fight with each other pretty darn well. But this is a time for us to come together, a time for us to recognize what we all have in common in terms of trying to protect each other more than anything else, protect each other, and protect this special place that we have here in the Ojai Valley. And it's already been amazing to watch the outpouring of generosity. But I want to emphasize to you, there are people here now in the Ojai Valley that more than ever are going to need housing. They've been burned out. In Ventura, we have people that need housing. And I'm particularly concerned for low and moderate income people in terms of the challenges that they're going to have. So one of the things that I ask you to do is, number one, if you see real price gouging out there in terms of rental facilities, et cetera, let us know, let the district attorney know. There are things that people can do, and people that are out there with those units need to know that there is a limit in terms of what they can do. So if you see it, let us know. But on the other hand, far more appropriate is for those of us that have the extra room, make it available. Most of us are blessed to have more housing than we need. I shouldn't say most of us, but many of us are blessed to have more housing. And if you're in that situation, now is the time for us to bond together and say, regardless of our differences here in the Ojai Valley, we are one valley and we take care of each other. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, this is a historic fire because of how many structures we've lost. But so far, we still have the pattern that has existed in the past, which is fires in Ventura County don't kill people. And we've only had one fatality, and that was due to an auto accident, not based on, but we have no fire fatalities so far. So how about a big hand for those people for doing that? And so pardon me for stretching this just a little bit more, but I point that out because in my neighborhood, the 5 houses across the street from me burned out. The 2 houses behind me burned out. We barely made it. Mike Powers, while he's working himself to death, is in the same kind of community. Houses all around him burned out. There's a tremendous amount of frustration that comes with an historic fire like this. And we, unfortunately, get the Santa Anas first. There's a pattern, and it was very enlightening for me to find out about that pattern. When the Santa Anas come, they hit Ventura County first, and then a few days later, they hit the Inland Empire, and then a few days later, they hit San Diego. And then people say to us, well, why can't you be as prepared as those people down in San Diego or the Inland Empire? Well, that's because they see it hit us, and then they know how they already we're gearing up resources and it can help. So there is frustration that is always going to come when an event moves this fast. But I ask you to be patient and be considerate of the fact that the people that made decisions to move us out and tell us what to do were much more worried about our lives than our structures. They were very worried about our structures, but they were worried about and it is remarkable that still in Ventura County, we're not having things that have happened like in Northern California, where we're going to funerals instead of going to insurance adjusters to get our homes fixed. So keep that in mind when you deal with the frustrating sides of it, and I implore you to do what I know the Ojai Valley does very well, and that is come together to try to give a historic, community-oriented amount of generosity to everybody that needs it to get through this fire. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Hello and good evening. My name is Steve McClary. I am the City Manager and the Director of Emergency Services for the City of Ojai. Thank you. Try to keep my comments fairly brief tonight. I do want to acknowledge, we did hear earlier from our Mayor, Mayor Johnston. I also want to acknowledge other members of the City Council who are here this evening. Mayor Pro Tem Bill Wyrick. Councilmember Randy Haney. I believe Councilmember Souza Francina is somewhere back there. There she is. And I'm not sure if Councilmember Paul Blatz was able to make it tonight. Okay, so again, thank you, members of the council, for being here. And again, thank you to everybody for coming out tonight. Wouldn't expect any less of a turnout from the Ojai Valley than what we've seen here tonight. And I do want to, again, I know it's been said many times, but also to thank the firefighters, the CAL FIRE, and everybody that has come out today. As it was said in Ventura today, when an event like this goes on, they all become our firefighters from throughout the state and other states in the western region. So we thank them for what they have done to protect this valley. Also wanted to thank and again acknowledge County Supervisor Bennett, as well as CEO Mike Powers for helping to bring their resources here this evening. As you know, the city is a small portion of the Ojai Valley here, and we will be all working together. And of course, when a major disaster like this hits, of course, we fall away from the jurisdictional lines and we try to work together. And as Chief Freihoff said, the city plays a fairly limited role in terms of its disaster response. Of course, we work very closely with County Fire and Jeff Dean and the Sheriff's Office to make sure that those services are being delivered to our folks and make sure that they're being kept safe. To that extent, though, the city does play an important role, especially as we move forward into the recovery. The city did proclaim a local emergency along with the County of Ventura and other cities, Ventura and Santa Paula, and we did open our Emergency Operations Center, and we kept that in operation through Friday. A couple of very quick announcements. I was in contact with Hadi Lashkari, the administrator of the Ojai Valley Hospital. He wanted to pass along to you today that the hospital is open. They are fully open and ready to go, and they have been open and functioning throughout the event. Also wanted to pass on that Ojai Valley Hospital is a source of the respirator masks. So if folks are needing those, they can go right into the lobby at the hospital and ask for them, and they will be provided. So again, the city will be working with the county as we move into the recovery phase, and we'll be getting more information out to the community as we move into that. But as we know, we're not quite out of the woods yet, so, but that phase will be coming soon. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Robert Levin. I'm the health officer for the county in the health department here. There's the health department director there. Put your hand up. Rigo Vargas. I'm an Ojai resident. My kids went to high school here. I've lived here for almost 20 years. I'd like to say hello to all the Airbnb residents that are passing through tonight. This to me is a little bit of a formidable audience to face because I've cut a third of you off in the grocery line and stolen parking spaces from another third of you. One of the things I'd like to do before I begin is I want to thank the fire department for all of the work they did, just in protecting my house, and every one of you feels the same way, feels a personal bond. And I want to thank law enforcement for being so present and making me feel so comfortable when I got pushed out of here for 3 days. I'm going to talk about, the other thing I did want to mention is I cannot begin to fathom the loss of the people or experiencing that have lost their homes. I get an inkling of it because I left my home and I heard things that made me fearful that I'd lost my home. Many of you did as well. Some people here really did lose their home, and I can't fathom how painful that must be for them. I'm here to talk to you about health consequences. How do you know when you're in an area with poor air quality due to fire? It's kind of a simple question. It's a fairly simple answer. And if you go home with any one thing today, from what I have to say, it would be that you know you're in an area where it's risky for poor health air quality if you see ash coming down, if you see ash on the ground, or if you smell smoke. I guess the other thing is that if you see lots of people wearing masks around you, even if none of those other three conditions. Ash may be irritating to the skin, nose, and throat, and it can cause coughing and rarely a bloody nose. Fine particles can be inhaled deeply into the lungs and can exacerbate conditions like asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, other lung conditions, and even heart conditions. Pregnant women, the elderly, and our children are particularly disproportionately at risk from ash exposure and have increased health effects from exposure to ash. So don't allow children to play in the ash. It looks tempting. Wash and clean all children's toys after possible contamination. And children should not be in the vicinity while cleanup is in progress. Everyone should limit their amount of time outside and stay indoors as much as possible. And if possible, seek shelter in buildings with filtered air, or move to areas outside the region if you can with less wildfire smoke, particularly if you're sensitive to it, until the smoke level decreases. Keep your windows and doors closed at home unless it's extremely hot outside. If you don't have an air conditioner, try to find a place that does. Run your home or car air conditioner on recirculate. And if I can just do a little mild hiatus here, it's important to hit that recirculate button when you're driving in your car and you're passing any clouds of dust. For another thing we're seeing in this county, which seems like nothing compared to this fire, valley fever, coxswain, whenever you see the soil being turned over by a tractor or anything like that, hit that air recirculation button so you're not bringing air in from outside. If you or your children have asthma or other lung disease, make sure you follow your doctor's advice about taking medications. Please keep up on your medications. And for those who cannot avoid being outdoors in a smoky environment, use a mask. And it's the kind of mask that clings to your face. A lot of people here I've seen are wearing the correct masks. They're called respirators. They're N95 masks and P100 masks, and they'll help filter out particles. They do not remove irritating chemicals that are aerosolized, that are in gas form, basically. And it's different. These masks are different than the ones that are the surgical masks. They're like the surgical masks are rectangular, basically folded pieces of paper with 4 strings coming out of them. Those, when you wear them, protect other people from whatever illness you have. But the masks that closely hug your face, they don't allow air to come in around them. And that's why they're called respirators, and they protect you from the outside world. And the other thing is small size respirators, and this is important, cannot be trusted to fit well on children. So it's just best to remove children from an area where there's a lot of smoke in the air. And that's the last thing I want to get into is I want to talk about ash from burned structures. And it's generally more hazardous than forest or wildfire ash. Forest ash contains microscopic dust particles of basically vegetation that can be deposited on surfaces and can also be inhaled and can cause problems. However, ash from buildings is more complex, and from burned buildings, and it can contain chemicals such as lead and cadmium, nickel, and arsenic. There can be asbestos from older homes. There can be perfluorochemicals from nonstick cookware that got destroyed in fires, flame retardants and caustic materials. And if the ash contains asbestos, nickel, arsenic, or cadmium, then exposure is a particular concern, and you never know when the ash does or doesn't. Because the substances in the ash vary, it's always best to be cautious and avoid any unnecessary exposure. So thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Chris Stevens with the Ventura County Resource Management Agency. There we go. I'm a little taller than the doctor, I guess. I didn't know. We'll try that. Very good. I'm Chris Stevens with the Resource Management Agency of the County of Ventura. And I'm here to talk very briefly about some of the things that we're doing that Supervisor Bennett referred to. We're already starting to look at the next phase, the recovery phase of this. Even though we see the flames still about us tonight, this is something that we actually started working on last Tuesday, the day after the event reached the city of Ventura. It was clear to us that there was a lot of things we needed to do to get prepared for that recovery phase. We know a lot of people have been horribly affected by this event, and we want to be prepared to move forward as quickly as we can, which is going to be a challenge. One of the first things that we looked at that we have to focus on are the debris. Dr. Levin just mentioned the fact that fire debris from residential structures is considered hazardous substances, and it has to be handled very carefully. I think we've seen on television people going back to their homes to search for personal belongings. Some of you may have already done that or may be doing that in the near future. I would just urge you to wear your mask, wear gloves, wear long sleeve shirts and any other protective clothing that you have to avoid getting yourself potentially contaminated with those hazardous materials. The other thing that we've been working on, we've been working with the state, that is the Department of Toxic Substances Control, to start coordinating with them to clean up those hazardous materials. It's a somewhat complicated process, but really it kind of boils down to two steps for cleaning the debris from those residential properties. The first step is to remove the hazardous materials, and that there's a program that the state can operate that we're hoping to bring into Ventura County, where they will actually come in and visit the properties, remove the hazardous materials free of charge to the property owners. Once those materials have been removed, the debris that is left is considered standard solid waste that then can be removed and taken to a normal landfill. There's also programs available to provide assistance for the removal of that material as well. We're working on that and gathering as much information as we can so that we hope in the near future we can have things in place for those of you that have lost your homes so that we can start that process of clearing the property and the rebuilding process. We're also starting to look at our ordinances and our building codes and our zoning ordinances. Fortunately, we have contemplated this type of event, and our ordinances actually provide a lot of relief to rebuilding structures that were destroyed in fires. We will be putting out information about how to get through that process for those property owners that need to do so. And to kind of centralize that information, we've actually stood up just last night a website. It is VenturaCountyRecovers.org. That will be our central repository for information. The only thing that you'll see posted up there right now is information about the debris and the ash and how to handle that. But as we get more and more information, we will be posting it there, and that will be available to anyone to look at. And of course, we're establishing other task force and whatnot so that we can be as responsive as possible. And one of the things we hope to do, we're looking at, is that we would actually bring up one of our emergency trailers to the Ojai Valley and do permitting here to save folks having the trip down Highway 33. So when we get those things organized, we will make sure we get notifications out to the community so as many of you as possible can take advantage of that. So there's just a host of things we're looking at. We're going to keep working on it, and maybe we'll be worthy of a sign from some girls saying they like planning and permitting, but dare to dream.
Good evening. My name's Terry Yanez. I'm from the Ventura County Behavioral Health Department. First, we want to express our just sorrow of what's occurred in our county, and we want to share our commitment to you to help the community recover. During times of stress, wildfires, these tragic events, People feel stress, grief, anger, guilt, and it comes on in different ways. And it's important for us to remember that there are ways to cope with this, and everybody copes differently. So we want to encourage you as a community to look around you, look at yourself, be sure you're caring for yourselves, drinking water, eating, observing your children, whatever stressors you're observing. Our department does have many resources for the community. We have a table in the back with some brochures with our phone numbers, our crisis team, our STAR team. We have a website, wellnesseveryday.org, and we're here to support you going forward as the days go on. So please take some brochures, take the pamphlets back there, and reach out to us, and we'll be available to come to the community where needed. We've got our crisis line numbers on here as well. And again, we're sorry. We're here to support you. And just thank you. Stay strong. And these are what they look like. I'm very sorry. One more thing. If you have any housing available at your home, granny flat, extra rooms, would you please contact Supervisor Bennett's office? Thank you.
So, good evening. My name is Jay Kurth. I'm a Unified Incident Commander working with the California team from Todd Durham for CAL FIRE. My incident management team is a national team with 56 people that respond to historic major incidents throughout the country and things. And I have the tremendous luxury of working with Todd, and I've worked with Todd in the past on a few incidents. So having that relationship and seeing the relationship in the community here is tremendous, because once you have a relationship, you start building friendships and partnerships, and makes everything work much, much more smoothly. That opportunity is something that we've really built on and taken advantage of, as I've brought my incident management team into work in support of what Todd's doing with his CAL FIRE incident management team. The other thing that I think is tremendous, that I'm not sure how much you guys are aware of or know about the response, is that we have over 4,400 firefighters that have come to your aid and support. So. Many of those firefighters have come from as far away as eastern Montana, Colorado, and throughout the western United States, as well as through 600 different fire departments represented throughout California. That, I think, is a perfect example of not only state and local government, but federal government all working to the betterment and the benefit of its citizens and all of the people that live in the United States for a change. It's a tremendous thing to see and feel and know how good it is to know that things work right when it's really, really important that they do. I'm quite proud to be a part of that. The other thing that I take a little bit of personal pride in here is that this is the second opportunity that I've had to come and serve your community. I was on a hotshot crew in 1985, came in here and hiked around and did some things. So I spent my 19th birthday with you, and I think I may have the opportunity to spend Christmas with you. So. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Todd Durham. I'm a division chief of CAL FIRE from Sonoma County. I'd just like to start with a couple of numbers to update you where we are today or this evening. I am the incident commander assigned to Team 4, similar to Jay's team, and the two teams have been married together along with the unified commanders from from the local fire departments and law enforcement agencies. Essentially, the fire service and law enforcement's a big family, a very big family, and so you have sheriff, chief, you have a bunch of your crazy cousins in town to help you. As of tonight, 155,000 acres have been consumed, and countywide, over 88,000 people have been either evacuated or in shelters have been impacted in some ways. We're at 15% containment, and at to date, the cost is $25 million to date. And so some of the things, because I don't like standing behind this over here, so I'll come over in front. I really do want to reach out because I personally have lived this, like you, both with the uniform on and with the family. And you truly have an amazing community. Your fire department, your law enforcement, you've heard it already. Trust me, as a community, you are far ahead. The counties of Sonoma and Napa, Mendocino and Lake, very devastating. But the cooperation that I have seen, just being the outsider, just being your visitor, has been amazing. I mean, you should truly, truly be proud to be survivors and how you've band together. So I truly appreciate that. And I also know that you've listened to many of us and you probably have some specific questions, so I'll cut it short. I know we'll have some of the local fire because I can point to the map to some of the areas, but I know you'll have specific questions, and so I want to make sure that we meet those. We can cover the broad questions, but for that I'll hand the mic back over and truly be proud of the work that you have done and your community that has come together. I truly, truly believe that this is a very, very resilient county, and you're on the right track. Thank you.
All right, we have time for some questions. If we have the speakers up here, any questions right now?
Current fire situations in the river bottom and the one that was the Soul Park area one. So we are still in active firefighting, obviously. Excuse me. At night, the fire is quite a bit more visible. Excuse me. I'm trying to get my breath back. And the two areas mentioned are the Black Mountain area and the river bottom, which is the Ventura River over here, just south of, or just north of the Baldwin Bridge, Baldwin Road Bridge. So the Black Mountain one is, we're still trying to get all the pockets of fuel burned out in the interior. So what we have is the edge of the base of that Black Mountain is burned down to both edges. There's still pockets of unburned in the middle. We call them islands, and that's what's burning out on Black Mountain.
Can you point to it on the map, Chief?
Black Mountain is, we have Sulphur Mountain. This general direction over here, the map's not going to have enough detail to point it out, but it's the South Mountain is where the big towers, the Doppler radar is. Black Mountain is between that and the Soul Park Golf Course, the lower mountain there. So we had that fire activity going when we all showed up to the meeting here. The river bottom, we're trying to clean up what we call cleaning up the edge. It's the western edge, the eastern edge of the Baldwin and Rancho Matella, just this side of Rancho Matella. We're trying to get it so it doesn't get down into the river bottom and continue south toward Miramonte and Casita Springs. So that's the activity you're seeing in those two areas. The river bottom one is a controlled burn. We timed it with the time of day. We wanted to get it going at nighttime when we have a little more predictable weather. The Black Mountain one is just a pocket of unburned fuel that's burning within the perimeter. Any other questions?
I have some information on that myself. It's my expert on the water board.
Do we have anyone representing Casitas Municipal Water? Okay.
Had boil water orders 2 days ago that were in the upper Ojai and the grassy zone in Ventura. The city of Ojai worked very hard in the city of Ojai to maintain tanks and hydrants. Water quality is It's as good as drinking water as you can get. So it is good drinking water.
Next.
Do you have any idea when we're going to be able to breathe the air without... We're talking weeks, days.
You know, it's all dependent on, we're still actively fighting a fire, and as long as it's burning, it's going to be smoke in the air. And what we're going to see is as these winds change, it'll push the smoke out, and then as the west wind, it'll push it back on shore. And you're seeing that now. You're seeing kind of clears out for a little while, the wind changes, and it comes right back, and we can't see. It's the same thing all the way down to the beach. Yesterday, you couldn't even see the Crown Hotel standing below at the bottom. You couldn't see the top floor. So it's going to be like that until we get the fire out and then some, or until we get rain.
There's a lot of community members that want to support the firefighters, and there's misinformation coming back and forth. What do you think that we could do to help you guys and women? Can we deliver what? What can we deliver to you?
I think the best way to go is through Red Cross, which we have on the websites. That's the best way to do it. And then to keep supporting us, have you been doing? When we ask for help, you're there. When we close streets, people are paying attention to the closures. That's about the best thing you can do, is keep an eye out for us. We're going to be in the neighborhoods. We're driving big trucks. We're driving cars. We're all over. Just keep an eye out and just, help us get where we need to go.
I have two questions. One, we drove in, we are evacuated in Ventura with an elderly aunt. We drove in tonight and saw the fires in the valley, and the concern is that the winds rise again tonight, that we want to stay home and defend our home. So the question is, I've seen on the news people who stand on their roofs with hoses saying they're helping the fire department by watering down their houses. Should we stay home tonight and water down our house?
We all know the answer. We're going to give somebody else, though.
Sure, pass it to the state guy. You're absolutely correct. You see that frequently in the media, that some people stay back. However, we don't advise against that. You have the right to do that. However, not being trained, the chances that you're taking are enormous. It's best, and it is my personal advice, is to have your home should be defendable before the Ready, Set, Go program. So I suspect you're all ready. This demonstrates the importance of being ready. So be set, have your belongings ready to go, and then when you receive the word to leave, you can make a fast exit. These fires have burned, and I said this in our operations briefing, as mentioned earlier, firefighters from all over the United States are here. And in the morning, they all get briefings before they go out, and as incident commanders try to give a closing comment to inspire them, to motivate them. And we do that every morning. And we also just want to remind them of the hazards. And from my experience in my career, almost 36 years in the fire service, since 2015, the fires that we have experienced, the fires that I have experienced personally, the Valley Fire in Lake County that burned into 3 counties and over 60,000 acres in 12 hours, the Detweiler Fire over Mariposa County. These fires are burning faster than ever before. So it's very, very important to be prepared to leave, and I would recommend following the orders that you receive from law enforcement and fire personnel.
Question here. Can you address mudslides and
Then I'll hand it back to you. CAL FIRE is already, we already have some personnel en route to work with the county to identify those areas. This is a practice that we have been doing in the last couple of years, where a team, once requested by the local agency, there's a few other state agencies that come out, they make an assessment of the areas. That first assessment is to identify areas that are vulnerable to mudslides, debris flows, areas where drainage ditches or culverts could be blocked, storm drains, and then make a list of recommendations of how to address that. That's the first phase, and generally the local agencies do that. either in-house or with contractors. In the case in Sonoma and Napa counties, they were overwhelmed. CAL FIRE was mission tasked to help with that. That's the first step of that phase if requested by the local entities. And then there's a second phase that goes even farther and looks into environmental issues.
So, sure. Let me finish an answer, and then I'll let you go. I just want to let you know that from the Forest Service standpoint, since the Forest Service has a lot of the slopes that could cause problems, Poncho Smith, your district ranger, has already ordered in an assessment team to look at the soil stability and the hydrologic capability and function of the landscape. And it's called a burned area emergency assessment. And they're already looking at the stuff immediately around Ojai for you to try and determine where the greatest risks are, what those mitigation measures are that need to be put in place, and do what we can from our side on the national forest to protect your properties on that side of it. And I just wanted to make sure that if you have further questions about that, Poncho has a full staff that can help out with some of those things. So, thank you.
May I say, first, I know I, like everyone here, are immensely grateful to you all. But I want to also express my gratitude to the many Ojai people, the ham operators, and the people who volunteered at the shelter. Some of the people were there for 12-hour, 14-hour shifts, and those were our neighbors. I know my particular neighbors were over there all through the night, all through the day, and that's us coming together. My question is about cleanup. Should I not bother to sweep up my porch? Would I be an alien particulates? Or should I sweep, or should I blow, or what should I do?
Well, I'm being pushed towards something right now that I already mentioned, and I'm being told to mention again. We have a lot of masks in the back. They'll be available for the whole family, so please don't forget to grab these. That's part of it. But you're right, yeah, don't blow the soot. Is that the one?
Can I ask something?
Wait.
I want to ask you if you could please give us, you said we're not out of the woods yet, and we're talking about ash on the ground. I mean, Chris Hilders today gave a really good example of what we might do with the ash, and that is to sprinkle it down so it doesn't flow, especially if you sprinkle down what you've got right now. And if the winds come up again, you're not going to have that much ash down on the floor, and it liquefies. I mean, you guys probably know better than I do. And also tips for us, you said we're not out of the woods. You know, for those of us that are still in danger of fire, what do we do with our homes? Do we shut each door to each room? Do we close the blinds? Do we, the windows are closed? All these tips.
We've been pushing real hard the Ready, Set, Go program, which will help give you, not only for fire, but for flood and multiple different possible disasters. But going through, it'll give you tips on preparing your house and preparing yourself. Remember, preparedness is year-round. So this is what you have now will work again. What you prepare for now, what you can prepare will work in the future. So a lot of that stuff is online. You can easily get on the website and you can pull up.
It's a county's what website?
You go to the, what'd you say? We can do VCFD.org. You can get Ready, Set, Go, as well as the sheriff's.
VCFD.org is one of the many resources.
Go ahead.
I have two questions, please. I have one and answer
We have something speaking down here.
Number one, is the city of Ojai still under mandatory evacuation?
No.
I haven't heard words, that's what I was asking. And are the world roads north of Grand Avenue still under our code?
No. Yes. It's listed right on the front. All of the road closures and all the evacuations area are listed on the vcemergency.org and Ready Ventura, same thing. I'll check because we were looking earlier and it was correct. So, but I can check. What?
We're going to do one question at a time. We have a lady up here that's going to ask a question. We'll do a couple more, and then we're going to break up so we can come down into the crowd. And excuse me, sir, if you sit down just a second, I'm going to take this question right here. Go ahead, ma'am.
We have a lot of fuel in Stewart Canyon, like piles of it, and there are a lot of homes back there. Who do we talk to about that? You guys have been on, but it's totally safe over our homes, but there's some fuel with a lot of people.
When she's done answering the question or stating the question, well, it's a question in regards to a large accumulation of fuel in which canyon? Stewart Canyon. So we're talking about fuel modification or vegetation management, and I'll turn that to the local fire.
Yeah, we have a whole unit within the county fire department that deals with that exact question, the excessive fuels. Fire hazard reduction program, again, back to the website, the vcfd.org has all kinds of information on how to mitigate that. Now, specific to your question, we'll have local resources, local fire station personnel go out there. They'll bring it to the attention of that FHRP unit, and we'll move it on from there.
All of the neighbors are out there, like with shovels.
We'll look at the big picture. Thank you.
The gentleman in the back that had a question. Yes, ma'am.
It's an environmental question, so maybe someone with an environmental background can answer this, but I was reading that the ash is toxic, and if you wash things down, that we're actually creating a toxic sludge that's going into the groundwater. So I was reading that we're supposed to be sweeping it, containing it, removing it, rather than watering it down and getting into the groundwater.
Okay, and that was covered once before, and that information can be obtained by the health department about the toxicity of the ash. Thank you for that question. We'll take one more, then we'll have the supervisor speak, and then we want to get off the stage and get down with you.
I'm sorry, I just want to give one additional shout out to the staff of the Humane Society for State of Ohio.
Is Rose Valley contained, and does anybody know when Highway 33 will be at least open to Wheeler Gorge?
The fire on the northern edge is at Rose Valley. We're trying to use Rose Valley as a point to contain it, and we're still in that process. So no, it's actively burning in Rose Valley. The second part of your question was when Highway 33 north of Fairview up toward Rose Valley opens.
We haven't been able to get in to see anything.
We still have the road closed at Fairview going north.
Any idea? Any idea when it might reopen?
When it becomes safe for the public to get in there. And I know that's a kind of a vague answer, but there's power poles that are down, there's rocks that are coming down. We clear it, more rocks come down, so we don't want to put anyone in harm's way.
This is what we're going to do for the remainder of the questions. They'll have all of us spread throughout the audience. You can come to us and ask us your individual questions so we can make sure that we get to all of you. Everybody gets some information. We got one more thing. Hold on.
If I could, just real quick to bring this to an end, you can see the questions are starting to get more specific, and so that's why it's better for us to break up and have that. But you had a question about dust, and I think it's probably the one that's most vague. We're going to put an answer to that at Ventura County Recovers. We're going to talk to Dr. Levin, who had to leave, and Dr. Levin will post what he thinks is the best answer to your question about how to handle all of this dust. VenturaRecovers.org. Monday, they'll post something there. Thank you very much. All right. Have a good night, folks. Thank you very much for coming.